Hey everyone, Pete Cook here. I want to talk a minute about the appraisal process and what's happening in our market right now. Real estate is supply and demand, and right now there is very little, record low supply, and with the rates we have, it is record high demand. So what's happening is that, let's say a house is worth $500,000, and that the appraiser and the seller and the listing agent all agree that the three sales in the neighborhood that are most similar point to this value being about $500,000. That is the likely appraised value for this discussion. And most sellers aren't expecting more than that, even though they'll get more right now. But it's not smart to say, well, let's aim high. They're saying, well, we'll price it at 500. If it goes higher, that's gravy. Okay, that's great news. So we have a list price at 500. It's a cute house. It's just listed. It's ready to show. Lots of showings on the weekend. The appraiser is going to come up with a value to prove to the bank at $500,000. What actually happens, though, is that after 30, 40, 50 showings, and there aren't enough houses for people at some point are saying, look, I'll pay 550 for the house. I don't really care about the market value. So we come up with buyers willing to pay 550 by Sunday afternoon. And this is happening left and right since the beginning of the year, a little bit before, but it's been the hardest since the beginning of the year. So here's the gap. Buyers are willing to pay 550, and that is several buyers. So this is not a fluke. But the bank says, well, look, I don't care if Denver's hot. I don't care if the house is cute. I'm willing to loan you based on what I can prove the home is worth, because they don't need a place to live. So they don't feel any desperation, any urgency to buy this house. So they stick with the facts. That's what a bank does. And they're going to say, look, we'll lend you on a value of $500,000. So the difference hanging out there in this case is $50,000. And so if the seller accepts an offer for 550 and the appraisal clause is a normal appraisal clause as built into the contract, the appraisal will come back at $500,000, and the buyer can say, well, look, I have 20% down, and that's it. I don't have extra money. So, dear seller, either we need you to reduce the price to $500,000, or I'm going to get out of the deal because I really can't afford to continue to buy this home. And that has been what's happened in a normal market in normal years. And this is not normal, not a normal year. So what agents are doing and sellers are seeing is buyers saying, look, seller, I'll gladly pay you 550. And if for some reason the appraisal is short, I will bring the extra money up to $50,000 to cover that gap. So a 20% down offer on a $500,000 house would be a $400,000 loan, $100,000 cash out of the buyer's pocket as the 20% down. And they would then say, I will bring an additional $50,000 if needed, so a total of $150 to complete this purchase. So the buyer's paying 10% over approvable market value. Now, the crime of this is that the value of a home or value of a thing is what someone's willing to pay for it. So we have a seller that sees three offers. We have buyer's agents that have written multiple offers and know that someone's going to pay $550 for this house. We have appraisers that live and work in our market, and they still also understand that the house is going to sell for $550. However, there's a bank somewhere in another state that says, well, there's no evidence for that, nothing closed to support that. So 500 is a number. So to win for a buyer or to be smart for a seller, there is language that is appraisal gap coverage. So I'm going to jump to another page and show you what that contract looks like. It'll help explain what we're dealing with and the logic. So move myself out of the way here. This is a contract I wrote, and it's currently actually under contract. The names and places have been changed to protect the innocent. In the event the appraisal states that the appraised value is less than the purchase price, so if it happens that the appraisal is 500 and the offer is 550, the buyer agrees that buyer will bring up to, this case was 51, but let's say up to $50,000 of additional cash to closing to make up the difference between the appraised value, the 500, and the purchase price, 550. Buyer represents that the buyer has already confirmed with the buyer's lender that the buyer contribution will not impact the loan. If the difference between the appraised value and the purchase price is greater than that $50,000, so let's say the appraisal comes in at $490, The purchase price will be adjusted automatically to the appraised price plus the buyer contribution, which is $50,000. So in this case, in this contract, which is kind of common, if the appraisal is $500,000, buyer brings $100,000 plus the $50,000, $150 in. Okay. If the appraisal comes in at, let's say, 530, the buyer brings 120% of 530 plus $20,000 because they don't have to spend $50,000 to make up the gap. There's a $20,000 difference between 530 and 550. So it's 20% of 530 plus $20,000. The not likely situation, but let's say the appraisal comes in low. The appraisal can only prove the house is worth, let's say, 480. In that case, the buyer has said, I'm willing to give you $50,000, but that's it. So I'm not making up the gap between 480 and 550. That's $70,000. So the price automatically adjusts to the 480 value plus what I'm willing to spend, which is the $50,000. So house would sell for 530. And the last thing down here is that the buyer has verified that this will not impact their loan and that basically the lender is aware that they might need this extra cash. So this is a massive discussion as a seller and a massive discussion as a buyer because this is pretty impactful. This is not easy to digest. It's making me choke up. This is not easy for anyone. And honestly, as an agent that's worked in this market forever, I feel old. This isn't fun. It's not fun for buyers or sellers, but this is what's happening right now. And it, it, it warrants a fair amount of discussion a little bit as a seller because it's in your favor, right? But as a buyer, it's a long talk with your agent. It's a longer talk with your lender to figure out what your gap is. So for you going forward, I don't have $50,000. Many people don't have $50,000. So let's forget the size of that number. Let's say your purchase price is $400,000 and you're going to see bids up to 405, 410, 420, and the appraisal is going to be worth $400,000. This process allows you to pick what you're willing to spend over that appraised value. So let's say you can spend $400,000, buy a $400,000 property, and you still have $5,000 or $10,000 that you could spend over the appraised value. That gets built into this. And you know what? If the house sells for 440, then it's just past what you can do. But this at least lets you bid over asking with what you can bid with. And it lets you define what your out of pocket would be in a worst case scenario. So that is, I made that 8 minutes. That's as short as I could make this whole discussion, but it really warrants a lot more of a conversation. So please reach out to me if you need a lender to dig into this, or you want to understand the other ways that I'm finding homes for people through off market and other tricks that keeps you out of the bidding competition. I'm happy to talk about that because although it's not as common to find a house that way, it can save you some of this discussion. So if you or someone you love is trying to buy a house right now and wants to learn more about this and obviously doesn't have an agent already, please reach out to me. If you want a lender for this conversation, reach out to me too. And information solves everything. So hopefully the better you understand this, the easier it is as you face our current market. And the final note is that all the stats I'm reading at the moment for this year does not show this easing. Now, is it sustainable? No. But do we have inventory to meet demand? Nowhere near. So this will likely, until rates go prohibitively higher, this will likely stay like this for a while. So waiting it out is probably going to cost you purchase price in the future, and the houses are going up pretty quickly. That's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. And again, reach out. I'm happy to dig deeper on this and talk more about it as you want.